Hi, my name is Corie Brown, and I am a professor of choral music education and director of choirs here at SJSU. My research is centered around how we best can serve all of our students, especially those who are marginalized in some way. But I did not come to this question of how best to serve all students quickly. It began when I was teaching in Chicago. It was my second job as a music teacher, and I was working in Chicago public schools in a neighborhood called Inglewood, and I was wholly unprepared to be in that situation and to be able to serve those students like I really think that they should have been served. It was a wonderful year. It was a learning moment for me, for sure. But I came out of that experience feeling like I wanted to do better, but I just didn't have the skills yet. I didn't know how I could serve these students with whom I was working. It was in an all Black neighborhood, and they were, a Title I situation, and the administration was, frankly, quite poor, and so the running of the school was quite chaotic, and also I straight up didn't have the skills as I think a fourth year teacher at that time to adequately serve the students. So I came out of Chicago and got a mutual friend connected me to Colombia. I'd always wanted to learn Spanish, and I was interested in getting out of education for a little bit and seeing what else was out there. And I ended up flying down to Colombia, to Bogota, Colombia, South America, and learning about the organization. I traveled around and got to meet a lot of the conductors, a lot of the students in this huge organization that I later found out was an organization of 60,000 students all across Colombia who were enrolled in essentially state-funded free music classes. The organization La Fundación Nacional Batuta, or Batuta for short, was inspired by Venezuela's El Sistema. And if you've heard of El Sistema Global or El Sistema programs in the States and truly all over the world, you would have heard that their goal and mission is to serve the students who are marginalized, who may not have money for lessons, who may not have music in their normal daily programs. And so I just saw this incredible opportunity to figure out how they're doing what they're doing. Of course, those 6 weeks of exploration turned into a year contract with them, conducting choirs and doing some teacher training there. And then it turned into another year contract. So I was there for 2 full years, living based in Bogota and teaching my own choirs and getting the opportunity to fly around the country and travel around the country to work with their teachers and do some teacher training and work with these choirs all over Colombia, which is so diverse and so beautifully. There's just so much there that I never knew existed. It was my first time in the country. So I fell in love with Colombia and the people and the music and the art and the culture and the food. But I especially I fell in love with and I gained a great appreciation for what this organization was doing and how it worked and how it serves these 60,000 students. They have, I think, last time I checked, about 350 music teachers working for them all across the country, going into these neighborhoods where the students are living and teaching them music, choirs, orchestras. They call them pre-orchestras, which are a combination of Orff instruments and traditional Colombian folk songs. And it was just a deep immersion into this incredible program and into the culture, where I started then finding patterns of, oh, this center does this teacher does this. Oh, that's working really well for these three people. I wonder what's happening at this center. So I started kind of without really intentionally calling it research. I started asking questions. Then fast forward 2 years later, and I'm back in the States doing my doctoral work in conducting. And of course, I kept in touch with my Colombian colleagues, and I decided to kind of dive deep into this Fundación Nacional Batuta and try to make those connections even more, I guess, grounded in clear research questions. What was the organization like of Batuta? How were they supporting their students? What were the support, not only the music teacher, but what was happening with the support of that music teacher and of those students? For example, I found that there were social workers employed that were to go out into the community and work with the families and connect the families to different resources. How did the assistants kind of help support the work of the music teacher? And then also, what pedagogical methods were working really well for the teachers? What were the most successful teachers doing that maybe the teachers who were a little less successful, who didn't have, quite as solid classroom management, or who hadn't gained the trust of the community in which they were working, what was happening there? And how could I maybe bring back some of these things that I learned eventually to the States, and eventually to students who I had an inkling I would continue working with here. So it's really exciting to kind of now be bridging that research with what is happening in our environment, with the questions that are being asked now during our time. And I think it has, in essence, prepared me for the questions that we are being asked of from our students and from our community, and how we are responding to to the time. So what I found is that, first of all, the best teachers, the teachers who were most successful, were teachers that really had a strong pedagogical foundation. It sounds obvious, but oftentimes in the States, in other parts of the world, we don't prioritize those Title I schools, or the situation. We don't prioritize those spaces. We send teachers who maybe are less prepared or newer in their careers, or just have a little bit less experience. It was really clear to me in analyzing what was working and where things were working really well pedagogically, that those teachers just had a very strong background. And so I think that's really important, and that what I'll try to do is bring that information, that learning, back to the States, and allow students, yes, to have experience, but also make sure that the best teachers are in the most challenging situations. The other pattern that came up was that it really takes a team to support students. And I saw this in Colombia. I saw this in Denver, where I worked and lived for a little bit. And I'm beginning to see it here in our California schools, that if an administration or a principal, or the people who have the control to bring in support systems for the school, can do so, that those students have such a higher rate of success. They truly feel held from multiple areas, not just from their choir teacher, or whatnot, their math instructor. So I saw that, for example, in Colombia, they have in every single center a caseworker, pretty much, a therapist who goes into the students' homes and connects them with the resources in the community, whether it be food stamps or food assistance or counseling services or whatever is available in that community. That person's main role is to connect to the families and to help support the students, and also to get the students to the musical center, they're called. So that extra level of support, I think, was really essential in the musical center in and around Columbia. Those musical centers working or hobbling along. They also had an assistant, which of course funding, we have to put our money where our mouths are, but the assistants helped run things. They helped, take attendance. They helped get the students who were late into the class. They were there every single day, whereas maybe as the teacher, I would come in for my class and stay a little bit before and after. Those assistants pretty much lived at those musical centers. So they were connected with the community. They knew what was going on. They knew if something had happened outside of the musical center the night before. They knew, the names of the parents and the grandparents and the sisters and brothers and cousins. So I think really thinking about it as a communal work, that we must in some way, shape, or form get to know the community that we're working in, was another pattern that came out that I think is 100% applicable to teachers and to our work here in the States. How can we better get to know the specifics of our community? Not every community is the same. In fact, no community is the same. And it's essential that we come in and ask questions, that we truly allow ourselves to learn about those with whom we're working and their families. So I think that my research and my work, while just beginning, I hope to really be able to share the patterns that are coming up, not only with my students, but with my colleagues and with all teachers in California and throughout the state, so that we can better understand how to work in a community that maybe isn't our own, but how can we best serve that community. I am so lucky to have a hybrid position. It was a brand new track when I was hired at the beginning of last year, and it is half conducting and half teaching, which is perfect because that's what really I feel my identity, at least at this point in my career, is. I love conducting. I love being on the podium and running a rehearsal and being in front of choirs, working with them and pushing them to make music. The really kind of artistic musical side of me gets to shine in that. And then the other half of my course load is music education classes. And I get to work with everyone from freshmen all the way to seniors, and then also some graduate students in music education, mostly with upperclassmen. And I really, really enjoy that element of it. I think forming teachers, getting a chance to at least try to share some of what I wish I would have known when I went into education and when I was a first-year teacher is really exciting to me. The way that I work my research into my teaching is multifaceted. I think that I'm still discovering how I'm working it into the classroom. But first of all, I think it's just useful to be able to share my experience with students. I have quite a diverse resume of job experience. A lot of teachers will stay at a school for 10 years, and that's wonderful, and grow a program for 10 years. I happened to bounce around in my career from Michigan, and then I spent 2 years in Chicago, then I was in Columbia, then I was in Oregon and and Boulder. So I have a large range of both working in the private sector and in the public sector, public schools. And so I think that mostly just sharing that experience and sharing what I've been able to learn from those experiences is how I'm working it in right now. I also get the chance to put my research into action with our incredibly diverse student body. And so I am doing my very best to apply what I've learned about serving marginalized communities and serving my students and taking them where they're at and just enjoying and honoring and celebrating all of the incredible identities that we have here in San Jose. A few pedagogical tips or tools that I've found useful include, firstly, just learning to be a better listener. As simple as that sounds, I'm still learning it, but I think that that space of actually listening to our students and creating time to sit down and get to know them and hear a concern or hear what their story's about, I think builds trust and opens then a space in the classroom, in the learning environment, to be able to actually, get to work. So just creating that trust for me is really, really important. I also engage my students, especially in my choirs, but even in my education classes, as actively and as kinesthetically as possible. So I engage their body, even just when they're sitting on Zoom or sitting in an education class, literally using their hand, literally using an action to kind of cement a concept. I have them get up and walk around the room, and before breakout groups were a thing on Zoom, in groups all over the room, then coming back and sharing in Socratic seminars, just all of the different ways that they can be active. I'm pausing so that maybe you can cut this out, but I'm going to say it because I'm going to say it, okay? It is disheartening that in my education growing up in the university, and still sometimes today, students are oftentimes sitting and listening to a lecture. We know from all of the research in pedagogy that sitting and listening, while might work for a few students, is not a way that many students are able to best learn. And I'm really heartened that we're able to kind of take a look as professors at our pedagogy, no matter how long we've been teaching. And I continue to strive to take a look at my pedagogy and figure out how can I serve and engage the students with whom I'm working. As a choral conductor, this question of the integration of my work and life is even more interesting to think about. Oftentimes I'll have concerts on the weekend and have rehearsals at all hours of the evening. So the balance between my personal life and my work life and my artistic life is oftentimes blurred, and I actually quite enjoy that. I quite enjoy, being colleagues and also enjoying the friendship of those with whom I'm in artistic, communion or artistic collaboration. It can set the scene for just really rich collaborative experiences. So that's really exciting for me. But I also think that this time that we're in is teaching us that we cannot be only professors. We cannot be only teachers. We're not just one thing. And so I, as a junior faculty especially, am working really hard at creating habits that allow me to be other identities, to make sure that I get outside every day and enjoy, running or walking and hiking, kind of finding the peace in the beautiful natural world of California. Making sure that I make music for myself, not just with my students or as a profession, but also just pick up my guitar or sing just for myself. That is not for anyone else, not in a concert, not not for money or anything like that. That I just make art for myself. And I also think finding community outside of our profession is so important, because we dedicate our lives and our hearts to what we do. I often notice that we become a little bit entrenched in those circles of people. As amazing as those circles are, I also think that my non-music, non-academic, non-researcher friends help inform my research, and help inform the person that I want to bring into my professional life. And so those relationships and those, experiences outside of the professional world, I think truly inform us and are really important to cultivate in a daily, weekly basis. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time out of your day to hear about a little bit of what I'm up to. Time is precious, and I really appreciate you sharing this with me.